Although the Three Stooges made millions of people laugh, the producers attempted to conceal the world of mysteries that lie behind their famous slapstick acts. There is more to the story than meets the eye, from contentious decisions to acrimonious arguments. What startling facts did the makers hide, and how did they influence the Three Stooges' legacy? Come along as we reveal the secret tales and unseen drama of Hollywood's most adored comedy trio. There are technically 6 Stooges. There are 6 of them, which is the first thing you should know about the Three Stooges. The group is called the Three Stooges because only 3 were present at any given moment. However, just 2 of them were present for the entire half-century duration. Who, then, were they? The ring boss, Moe, Moses Harry Horowitz, and his lifelong companion, Larry Feinberg, were the originals and pillars of the series over the years. Moe's brother, Shemp Howard, Samuel Horowitz, played the role of the rotating third stooge first, followed by Moe's other brother, Curly Howard Jerome Horowitz, Joe Besser, and last but certainly not least, Curly Joe DeRita. Who was Moe? Moses Harry Horowitz, popularly known as Moe Howard, was born in a tiny Jewish neighborhood on the borders of Brooklyn, New York, and grew up with 4 other brothers, 2 of whom would go on to join him in show business as members of the Three Stooges act. Moe was already determined to succeed in show business, and he even left high school after just 2 months to focus on his passion for theater. However, his entertainment career truly began when he was just a preteen. Getting into show business. Moe Howard entered the film industry in the most traditional manner imaginable. In 1909, when he was around 12 years old, Moe started running errands for performers and comedians, and he diligently worked his way up. He found that his one-way ticket to becoming a performer himself was his hard work and dedication at Brooklyn's Vitagraph Studios. The youthful and enthusiastic performer would soon land parts in comedic films alongside Flora Finch and John Bunny. How thrilling! Moe's signature look. Moe's trademark bowl-cut hairdo was one of the things that contributed to his iconic status. Many ideas existed regarding how Moe got there, but a common one is that his mother didn't cut it because she wanted a daughter when he was born. Unfortunately, Moe and his buddies sneaked into a shed and chopped off his long hair, using a bowl to guide the cut because some other school pupils were tormenting him. He seemed afraid to reveal to his mother that he had chopped it off, but she was genuinely happy with the cut and didn't dare do it herself. Meeting Ted Healy. Only a few years later did the entire Three Stooges ploy come to fruition, but it all began with Moe's encounter with Ted Healy. Following their meeting in 1909, the two were cast as diving girls in Annette Kellerman's aquatic act a few years later. They immediately became close friends, and in 1922, Moe's brother Shemp and the 2 of them reunited to form the Three Stooges. Larry Fine trained in boxing. Based on one boss stooge, Moe, issuing commands to the other 2 stooges through a humorous twist of insults, slap fights, pie-to-face pranks, and other several funny childish gags, the Three Stooges act is a classic comedy style, and Larry Fine, the enduring middle stooge, could undoubtedly manage his own. He trained as a boxer and even earned a living as a teenager. He had no idea this would be useful in his later years as a comedian, when he frequently had to deliver awkward punches or take a beating in the face when performing as one of the Three Stooges. But what specifically led him to join the original Stooges? Larry Fine gets into acting. Larry Fine, who lives on the East Coast, developed his performance skills by playing the violin at a very young age. But as he matured and approached adolescence, he developed a greater interest in singing and began to make money doing it in addition to his boxing performances. However, as he became 18, he shifted his attention to theater acting, notably vaudeville. He met Moe and Ted in 1925, some 5 years later, and briefly took Moe's position as his stooge in one of their performances. Ted Healy and his Stooges. Ted Healy, Moe, Larry, and Shemp performed in a theatrical comic group called Ted Healy and his Stooges in the 1920s, which inspired the Stooges. Ted Healy was a well-known vaudeville comedian then, and this performance would be a massive boost to the Stooges' comedic careers. Before appearing in the famous movie Soup to Nuts in the 1930s, the 4 traveled around doing their vaudeville comic act for almost 10 years. The group seemed to go their separate ways for several intriguing reasons. The split in the 1930s. Moe's role in the Three Stooges performance, in which he essentially chastises and haggles his stooges left and right, was comparable to Ted Healy's persona in the Ted Healy and His Stooges act. However, by the 1930s, it became evident that his behind-the-scenes actions were influenced by whatever was happening on stage. The Stooges decided it was better to split up with Healy, since he began to exhibit symptoms of a substance abuse problem. They thought Healy was too much to deal with off-set, and he was also grossly compensated. Changes in the early years. In case it wasn't evident previously, Shemp shared his brother Moe's desire to pursue an entertainment career. In 1933, he became the first member of Ted Healy and His Stooges to leave the band to pursue a solo career. He ultimately returned to the Three Stooges, but not in the best conditions, even though he was highly successful and appeared in several movies. However, Moe replaced Shemp with his other brother, Jerome Curly Howard, as Shemp embarked on his epic filmmaking career in the 1930s and 1940s. From Ted Healy and His Stooges to the Three Stooges. 2 years or so after the group quit working with Ted Healy, Moe, Larry, and Curly were signed by Columbia Pictures to do a short comedy agreement that would eventually result in the well-known Three Stooges. The three of them would go on to create more than 200 short films featuring a variety of absurd antics that would revolutionize the comedy business. This was because each of them, especially Curly Howard, their most recent addition, was unique in its own right. Curly's signature look. Despite having a shaved head, Jerome Curly Howard is known by the nickname Curly, which is supposedly a reference to his curly nature. Although every Stooge had a distinctive appearance, Curly was a unique individual who acquired his look in an intriguing method. Before joining the group, Curly sported a wavy chestnut brown fro and waxed mustache, but it seems Ted Healy would only recruit him if he shaved off his head, presumably hoping that he would back down. Ted had no idea that Curly was prepared to take on the role and embrace this humorous signature look. Curly's signature sayings. Despite being the fourth Stooge to join, Curly undoubtedly made one of the most important contributions to the act because his personality and charisma more than made up for his lack of hair. Who could forget his famous "nyuk nyuk nyuk" and "woo woo woo" shouts, as obnoxious as adorable, traditional. That added the awkward flair we all adore in those vintage black and white shorts. Curly swiftly rose to prominence as the most well-liked Stooge, thanks to his high-pitched voice and unique facial gestures. They did their stunts. Stunt doubles are now available to handle all the falls, jumps, and other physical stunts in films and television shows. The Three Stooges themselves, however, used to execute their stunts back in the day. We had to give them extra praise and a salute of respect because they were so committed and strong through them, even if it was amusing for everyone to watch them get prodded, smacked, or struck with props, especially considering that they frequently suffered injuries on sight as a result of everything. Stiffing the Stooges. Regretfully, Ted Healy wasn't the only one who refused to pay the Stooges. None of the Three Stooges received a raise during their 24-year contract with Columbia Pictures. Not only that, but they had no idea how large they were. They believed that short films were becoming less popular, which they were at one point, but they didn't quite understand how well-known their act was until years later. Talk about the necessity of social media and Google. Keeping their personal appearance profits. It turns out that head honcho Moe had a cunning plan, even though the beloved and uninformedly famous stars may have been stiffed while working with Columbia Pictures. Moe ensured that their contracts included a clause granting them the right to keep all earnings from their appearances, which ultimately brought them far more money than they could ever have earned from the more than 200 short films they produced. How ingenious. Curly's heartbreaking ending. The man we all know and love as Curly, Jerome Lester Horwitz, was 6 years younger than his older brother Moe. Even though Moe's younger brother seemed adorable and awkward on camera, his actions offset were anything but innocent. Unfortunately, Curly went down a rabbit hole and ended up with obsessive spending, substance abuse, and even obesity. Curly could not take the necessary actions to improve, even as Moe attempted to assist him in reorganizing his life. Curly's career ended tragically in May 1946 as he suffered a major stroke on the last day of filming Halfwit's Holiday. Historically classic comedy. Curly recovered from his stroke, fortunately, But the 43-year-old comic was not in a fit state to perform anymore, except for one last movie appearance in 1947. This movie, Hold That Lion, was more than just Curly's final movie appearance, but it was also the only one in which the three Howard brothers, Curly, Moe, and Shemp, were all in the same movie, making it a comedy classic. Even more devastating was on the horizon for Curly, who expected that this performance would pave the way for him to rejoin the group. Reviving an original. The three-man band was now missing a stooge, so Moe thought bringing back one of the original members, Shemp, would be best rather than adding a new member. Even though Curly was the all-American favorite, Shemp also had unique qualities. For example, he was 5 feet 7 inches tall, the tallest of the Six Stooges, and he was famous for his peculiar reaction of shouting, "Yee, yee, yee, yee," in many of his pieces. Stepping back into the Three Stooges spotlight. Shemp had put much effort into succeeding in show business in the 10.5 years since he left the Stooges, earning the title Ugliest Man in Hollywood. He had his humorous short film series produced by Columbia Pictures in the 1940s while the Three Stooges signed with them. Shemp saved the day and returned to the Three Stooges spotlight to take Curly's position, despite his initial reluctance to leave his lucrative solo career and rejoin the amusing group. Curly's health decline. Regretfully, Curly's health was still not excellent until the late 1940s. Hold That Lion, after shooting, his health deteriorated significantly more and more quickly when he and his brothers experienced another round of strokes. Due to his health and medical problems, Curly died on January 18, 1952, at the early age of 48. Although it was heartbreaking for fans, family, and friends to lose their beloved Stooge in such a tragic manner, the Three Stooges would suffer further losses during this period. The show must go on. The cast believed that the program had to continue despite their brother's tragic death, especially since they still had a contract with Columbia Pictures. Shemp replaced Curly, but that wasn't the only thing that changed after his death. By the time the 1950s arrived, Columbia Pictures' long-running rumors of closing its short film division had finally come to pass. However, what did this signify for the contracting frantic trio? The change in the 50s. Have you ever noticed that the episodes from the 1950s differed significantly from those from the 1930s and 1940s? What about any parallels? And no, we are referring to the episode's caliber, not the casting. The film and television industries changed in the new decade. After the department shrunk, the production team made several significant cuts to keep it within the budget. They spent less time shooting and more time editing old material to recycle. Plus, they had various writers and directors, so they varied the episode's writing to make up for it. Additionally, their act appeared to have to be retired later in the decade, but not before significant cast changes. Recasting throughout the 50s. It's incredible how one of the most significant comedians in history, who has delighted and amused countless people for countless years, has endured such suffering. Regrettably, in the 1950s, the depressing news simply kept coming. There were several casting changes during the decade, all for tragic causes. Shemp took over following Curly's death in 1952, but only 3 years later, Shemp would need to be replaced. Everyone was shocked when the one and only Shemp died in the fall of 1955. His death was sudden and unexpected. An unexpected death. Shemp had gone out with some mates to see a boxing bout on a fun guys' night. Unfortunately, the 60-year-old Shemp suffered a severe heart attack while returning home from the game and passed away. What must it have been like for the family to lose 2 relatives in such a short period? Naturally, their supporters also took these defeats quite personally. Moe was prepared to leave the limelight and end the Three Stooges at this moment. Introducing the fifth Stooge. Moe was devastated and in complete shock over his brother's untimely death. However, as with Curly's death, they were still bound by their Columbia Pictures contract. Therefore, the show had to continue. Then, Joe Besser was added to the crew as the fifth Stooge. Despite Besser's outstanding solo comedic career, which included roles in Hourglass, The Abbott and Costello Show, and The Joey Bishop Show, the production firm felt he would be a perfect fit because he was already signed to Columbia Pictures. However, what were the actors' thoughts on the matter? Joe, the fifth Stooge. Surprisingly, instead of hiring a replacement, Moe and Larry opted to keep performing as the two Stooges. The production firm, however, made it apparent that they needed a third Stooge because they still had 4 more films to shoot. Oddly enough, though, Joe was first quite wary and anxious about getting wounded at work, a prerequisite for their humorous plots and awkward confrontations. When it came time to shoot the slap stunts, Larry volunteered to take his place. What a man! However, Joe began to feel more at ease with the concept and team over time, and he consented to participate in the physical aspects. No good at saying goodbyes. To say that Columbia Pictures is terrible at saying goodbye would be an understatement. After recording their final short, Sappy Bullfighters, in 1957, the Three Stooges had completed their contract with Columbia. However, they would still distribute their shorts over the following year and a half. They did not, however, give an appropriate and ceremonial farewell or any kind of celebration from the production company itself, despite having been under contract for more than 20 years. How depressing. Rumor has it that when Moe attempted to return to say farewell to some of the executives he worked with, they wouldn't let him inside the building because he didn't have a studio pass. After all, Columbia no longer employed them. Farewell to the fifth Stooge. The three had to figure out how to keep the act going after bidding Columbia farewell in the late 1950s. Since their movies kept coming out in the following months, they were still profitable and relevant, but required a different strategy to keep the show running. They decided to start a personal appearance tour and take the show on the road. Joe was thrilled to be a part of it all, but chose not to take advantage of the chance. Unfortunately, his wife's health wasn't stable, and he wanted to work local jobs to stay able to support her throughout her difficult period. Reviving the best original. Larry and Moe had to find someone else to replace the third Stooge in their act since the dynamic pair was back to square one. The two contemplated Ted Healy, the ultimate original, but he surprisingly failed the test. What are we able to say? Even though the act might have felt the same, Larry and Moe had undoubtedly advanced significantly over the previous few decades. They kept looking for the next few weeks until they thought they had finally found one. Welcoming the sixth Stooge. Larry discovered Joe DeRita, a humorous burlesque performer, in 1958, and he looked to be the perfect fit. Not only did DeRita's humor and style match the role, but the 5'4" comedian even looked like Curly, which is how he got the nickname Curly Joe for his character. When the dynamic duo was looking for Shemp's replacement, they wanted to work with Joe DeRita, but he had a contract elsewhere. Fortunately, when Larry came to him with this fresh offer years later, 1 week remained on that same contract. What opportune timing. Making a successful comeback. The 1950s were undoubtedly tricky and painful, but fortunately, the 1960s were about to change everything. As their fame grew, the Stooges made a massive comeback with their feature films. They were offered a variety of new TV chances, including live-action colorful films, animated cartoon programs, and live touring tours. But they put in a lot of work over those years. As a result, the trio is still occasionally referred to as Larry, Moe, and Curly Joe, in addition to the original nomenclature of the Three Stooges. Going to schools. The group had seen many highs and lows in their individual and personal lives and professional careers in entertainment. The Three Stooges had a successful decade in the 1960s, but the team suffered a few more devastating defeats in the 1970s. In addition, Larry experienced a string of strokes that left him partially paralyzed and with other severe bodily effects. However, he continued to appear on stage whenever he could, despite being immobile and restricted to a wheelchair. He kept in touch with the public, visited schools, and screened his work on film. Another big opportunity in the 70s. Larry Fine was there through it all, and his characteristic bushy, hot mess, untidy hair and receding hairline are what fans remember of him decades later. However, Larry Fine, who was adored and greatly revered, died in January 1975 from his illness following a string of strokes. The Stooges had already inked a deal for a significant opportunity to co-star in the R-rated film Blazing Stewardesses just before this heartbreaking loss. Unfortunately, their participation in the 1975 film was canceled for another tragic cause. The last left of the original crew. The enduring Stooge and affectionate Larry Fine had died at 73, leaving Moe as the sole member of the original group. head honcho Moe received some unsettling news regarding his health 1 week before Blazing Stewardess's production started. After receiving a lung cancer diagnosis, the longtime hysterical comedian was forced to decline the starring role and concentrate on his illness. The end of the legendary Three Stooges act. The world and the Howard family will suffer another devastating loss a few months later, the passing of the excellent Moe. The renowned Three Stooges performance ended when the one and only Moe died in May 1975 at 77. The Three Stooges, however, are not forgotten at all, and on August 30th, 1983, a band member was duly inducted into the Hollywood Walk of Fame at 1560 Vine Street. Since they contributed to the development of humor in the 20th century and were a part of such a significant period in the history of the cinema industry, their illustrious and infamous reputation endures even now, 50 years later.
If you've watched the video till here, that means you've enjoyed the video. Subscribe. Don't forget to turn on the notifications bell icon